All right, welcome everyone to Icon. My name's Dan and I'm a pastor here. And excited that you guys are here with us at the beginning of 2019. Anyone ready for a new year? You guys excited for 2019 and a fresh start? Absolutely, yes, I'm right there with you, ready for a new year. And here's what we have to prepare ourselves for. Like this already, I've had to think through this so this didn't happen to me. So I want to prepare you. You're already going to do this. So just brace yourself for 3 months of this, right? Like we all know this is coming towards a future near you, right? Like it's part of a new year every single time. So just get used to that now. We're going into a new year, a new season, and we wanted to kick it off with kicking off a new series called CNTRL+ALT+DELETE. Now, here's the thing. This idea of CNTRL+ALT+DELETE, as we had this idea, we're like, oh, this will be great. This is kind of something that everyone is familiar with, probably something that all of us has done. And then it started hitting me that maybe some of the younger ones of you've never had to do this, right? You've never had to bear the burden that the rest of us had to. In fact, anybody out there that has never hit CNTRL+ALT+DELETE, you've never had to do that on a computer, you're like, a few hands out there. Now for the rest of us, how many of you have had to use CNTRL+ALT+DELETE in your life? Yes, absolutely. And you know when we would do it? It would be like at the most inopportune times, right? Like you're working on a paper, you're working on something for work, and all of a sudden you see the blue screen of death, right? You remember this? You remember this screen, right? And you'd see this and instantly you'd be going, no. Like I just created stress-induced, tech-induced PTSD for some of you. I get it. You're twitching right now, right? Because this screen means you may have lost everything, right? Like when was the last time you saved? Do you remember having to work on a computer and reminding yourself save every few minutes? Now computers automatically do it, but being reminded, I have to save this every few minutes because if I see this screen, everything between my last save and this is now gone. And what you would do is a computer would crash and you would have to hit that key command, CNTRL+ALT+DELETE. Now what's interesting is where that key command came from. It was actually invented by a guy named David Bradley, and he was one of only 12 people that were tasked with the original job of writing the operating system, the code, for some of the very first computers that IBM was making. And in 1981, he was working, there was 12 of them, and they're writing the codes for it, and their computers kept crashing just over and over. Well, what they would have to do is they'd have to restart it, and every time a computer would start up, it would have to test all the memory in that computer, all 200 bytes, whatever it was back then. It was not much, but it took forever to reboot. So he created this key command to restart the computer without going through that huge systems check. So every 5-10 minutes, they didn't have to go through that whole process. What's amazing about this is he didn't intend it to be common knowledge for people to do it, publicly, but computers kept crashing so often that was the key command they'd have to do, that it kind of became this kind of cultural icon that we know it to be today. And what's awesome about this is Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, he was really blamed for a lot of the crashes in the early PCs, and it would infuriate him when people would blame Microsoft and him for this whole CNTRL+ALT+DELETE thing. In 2013, he finally admitted that CNTRL+ALT+DELETE was a mistake, and he regretted it, but he blamed IBM, and he blamed them. Well, what's awesome is in 2001, there was this tech conference, and Bill Gates is there, CEO of Microsoft. Microsoft, that's at the pinnacle of, as a business. And this guy, David Bradley, is invited back to talk about how CNTRL+ALT+DELETE got started. And I'm going to play this video for you. It's super grainy. It's bad footage. The audio's not great. But it is the most awkward moment because David Bradley cracks this joke at Bill Gates' expense. And you've got to see Bill Gates' face. It's absolutely amazingly awkward. So check this out. This is David Bradley explaining CNTRL+ALT+DELETE.
Actually, I was just trying to solve a development problem that we had. Brand new hardware, brand new software, you're testing the stuff out, it would hang up all the time. So the only solution you have is turn the power off, wait a few seconds, turn the power back on, and wait for it to go through the power on self-test. I said, I'm writing all this code for the keyboard, I can, let's just shortcut it. And I originally intended for it to be what we would now call an Easter egg, just something we were using in development, it wouldn't be available elsewhere. But then the pubs people found out about it, and they're trying to figure out how to tell somebody to start up one of their programs, and they had the answer. Just put the diskette in, hit CNTRL+ALT+DELETE, and by magic, your program starts. So it was like a 5-minute job in doing it. I didn't realize I was going to create a cultural icon when I did it. but I have to share the credit. I may have invented it, but I think Bill made it famous. when you used it for NT logon. That's what I meant. Okay.
Oh, that's amazing. Just painfully awkward as he sits there. You know what's going through his head is like, I could crush you with the amount of money I have, and I will, right? Like, it was amazing. So that was the beginning. So if anyone ever asks you, if you're ever in jeopardy and you're tasked with that question, now you know the answer, so you're welcome. But this is the idea. This is the direction we're going with this series, is you get to have a fresh start. That what does it look like? What could it look like in 2019 for you to restart? I mean, what if you could have a restart? What if you could kind of reboot, in a sense, in 2019? What if you got a fresh beginning? What would that look like? What would that mean? Because I don't know what 2018 held for you. Maybe 2018 was an amazing year, and you want another year just like that. Or maybe you look back on 2018 saying good riddance. Like you're ready that year is done, and you're ready for a fresh start. You want it to be a completely different year. Well, wherever you find yourself, we're going to be talking about this idea of having a fresh start, because here's the thing. Here's the reality. You can't change 2018. You can't. It was what it was. What happened, happened. You can't go back and change that. What's happened in your past, whether it was yesterday, last week, last month, last year, or in the past decade, you can't change that. No one can change the past, but everyone can change their future by making change today. You see, there will come a point a year from now that you will be looking back on 2019, and you can change your future self by making choices today, by saying, I'm going to change today. This is why, personally, I love New Year's resolutions. Now, I know I've talked to people, and they say, why wait to a new year to make a resolution? Why not decide in September? And I agree with them. But for me, it's whatever you can use at any point, whether it's a new year, maybe it's a big birthday or an anniversary, to decide to make change, to create a better future for yourself and for others, man, then use it. Like whatever it is, leverage that opportunity to create change. You can't change the past, but you can change your future by making change today. And what I love is when we look back, maybe 2018 was a difficult year for you. Maybe it was a challenging year. I talked to someone after first service that told me about some of the challenges of their previous year. And I could tell in their eyes, and I could tell as they talked to me, that they just wanted change so bad for their life, that last year was an incredibly challenging, difficult year for them. And wherever you are today, maybe that was you. I want to offer you some hope. You see, I love that the Bible contains stories and letters and histories of people that had difficult times, and it doesn't like show everything through rose-colored glasses. That the authors, the people writing these things, were incredibly honest with God. We can read about these prayers that they had where they just let God have it, where it seemed like all hope was gone. In fact, one of these most famous letters is this letter called Lamentations, and we can find it in our Bible in the Old Testament, the beginning part of it, where the author Jeremiah is just letting God have it. He's had an incredibly challenging year. His nation is facing something that they hadn't faced in generations. You see, the nation of Israel was a nation that had previously been in slavery in Egypt. But this national identity was one of coming out of slavery, getting hold of the promised land, establishing their kingdom. It was as if they had arrived. And then later on in their history, they had lost their way. And eventually they were taken captive. They were defeated by another nation. Their city was laid to waste. The temple was in ruins. The people were carried off and taken back into slavery or killed. Jeremiah is looking at all of this, and he just doesn't even know what to say. And he just lets God have it. And here's what he says as he looks back on his past. He has made my flesh and my skin waste away. He has broken my bones. He has besieged and enveloped me with bitterness and tribulation. He has made me dwell in darkness like the dead of long ago. He's just letting God have it. So if you had a bad year, and this is the kind of year that Jeremiah has had. He goes on, it gets worse. He says, he drove into my kidneys the arrows of his quiver. I have become the laughing stock of all peoples, the subject of their taunts all day long. He has filled me with bitterness. He has sated me with wormwood. I have no clue what that means, but it sounds bad, right? I don't know if you've ever been sated with wormwood, but it does not sound pretty, right? And then as he wraps this up, he says, he has made my teeth grind on gravel and made me cower in ashes. My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. So I say, my endurance has perished. So has my hope for the Lord. And he's just lost all hope. And if we read this, maybe you look back at your 2018, maybe you look back at different seasons of your life and you can relate to this. You can relate to feeling like, I don't even know what happiness is like anymore. Like, I just feel like I've got nothing. And then Jeremiah takes this weird turn. I mean, he says all of these things, and yet he offers this tiniest sliver of hope. After this, Jeremiah says, but this I call to mind. He's saying, I'm bringing this back into my remembrance, and therefore I have hope. The question is what could bring you hope in a moment like this? Right? If you're Jeremiah, if you've seen all of this, if you've seen your people go through this, what on earth could bring you hope in a moment like that? Jeremiah gives us his answer when he replies, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. It's like he's saying, God, I feel like you haven't answered me in all these things, but one thing I know is tomorrow's a new day. In that way, God, your faithfulness, it never ends. There's these new mercies that are new every morning, these new opportunities that present themselves every morning. And what Jeremiah was reminding himself, what he was bringing into his remembrance, is something I want to remind you. I want to remind you that you can have a new beginning, that you get a fresh start today. Every single one of you, if you choose it, you can have a fresh start right now. You might be thinking, well, Dan, it's not January 1st. It doesn't matter. You can have a fresh start this year, this week, today, if you choose to. You see, the reason as followers of Christ, the reasons we believe this, if you're a Christian in this room, you have hope because the guy you try to follow, Jesus, he said this. We find this in one of his followers, John, a pastor, is writing a letter towards the end of his life, and it's this kind of cryptic letter, and there's all these things going on. But he gives this image of Christ, of Jesus, sitting on a throne. And these are the words of Jesus spoken to every single one of us. And he who is seated on the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. That Jesus looks at every single one of you and says that he can make all things new. If you're a follower of Christ in this room, you believe this because you've experienced this from time to time. And if you're not, if you're here, maybe you're a guest, you're just checking this thing out, I want to tell you that you can have a fresh start. That Christ really does make all things new. But it begs this question, right? Because I get it. I've been in church long enough and I've heard pastors say things like that. And it begs this question. You're like, okay, great. That sounds good. It's a good soundbite. But I want to know how. Like, how do you reboot your life? If I've lived my life, however many years it is, how do I get a fresh start? That sounds great when you're up there on the stage, but what does it mean for me today? Because I know the choices that I've made. I know the things that have happened in my life. How do I get a fresh start? And I want to tell you something that might be encouraging and might be discouraging because it's nothing monumental. In fact, I want to challenge you with the simplicity of this. Do you know how you reboot your life? You decide to take control of it. Key word here, operative word in that sentence is decide. You decide by the brutal choice of your will to take control. To say, enough has happened, but today I choose to take control and to make choices that are going to change my future from here on out. It's the brutal choice of your will. It's not some emotional moment. It's probably not going to happen in some song and some, all this hyped up. No, you choose and you say, today is going to be different. And from this day forward, things are going to be different. So in this series, CNTRL+ALT+DELETE, I'm going to take that kind of first button in that key command, control, and talk about how to take control in 2019. This is how you're practically going to do it. Because we can sit here and we can talk all day long about hypothetically how things could be different. But what I want to give you is some tools, some practical tips, some things that you can implement in your life this week that will allow you to take control of your life and to decide up front how 2019 is going to be different. So number one, the first thing you do is you make the most of every opportunity you have. Every opportunity that presents itself, you make the most out of that moment. You decide to take that opportunity because here's the thing, every single one of us have something in common. We all have different pasts. We all have different socioeconomic makeups. We all have different families of origin, but we all have the same amount of time today. You don't get any more hours out of the day than I do, and we don't get any more hours out of the day than the president, than a CEO, than anyone else. We all have the same amount of time. It's how we use that time. It's how we leverage every opportunity that presents itself. There's someone that knows this truth so well, and someone that talked to early Christians. There's a guy by the name of Paul that knows this truth all too well. He wrote a bunch of letters when the early church was getting started. He'd plant these churches and write letters to them. And Paul has a unique perspective about making the most out of every opportunity, because Paul spent his earlier life doing everything he could to stomp out the Jesus movement. Everything he did, his training, his background, his schooling, everything he did raised him up so that he could stomp out the Jesus movement. And he did it with everything he had, with passion and gusto. In fact, he would travel around with authority from different leaders trying to arrest and persecute these early followers of Jesus. He was actually there when one of these followers of Jesus gave his life for what he believed in. Paul was standing there giving his approval. Paul spent his life trying to stop this Jesus movement, and then one day had this radical change in his life. Encountered God in a way that he never expected, and his life was forever different. So then he had this perspective. He looked back at his previous life and saw the direction that had gone, and he's writing this letter saying, we've got to make the most of this. Guys, you only have so many opportunities. And in this letter to a church in Ephesus, he writes this: be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. He's saying there's so many opportunities. There's so much evil in this world. So weigh it out. Think carefully. Be wise, not unwise, and make the most of every opportunity you get. I love the way the late Eugene Peterson puts it in his paraphrase, The Message. He paraphrases Paul's words here and puts it in modern English, and here's the way he puts it. Don't waste your time on useless work, mere busy work, the barren pursuits of darkness. Expose these things for the sham they are. It's a scandal when people waste their lives on things they must do in darkness where no one will see. Rip the cover off those frauds and see how attractive they are in the light of Christ. He goes on, wake up from your sleep, climb out of your coffins. Christ will show you the light, so watch your step, use your head, make the most of every chance you get. These are desperate times. Paul is saying, make the most of what you have. It's early in the year. Decide now. Decide now that your year is going to be different. Make choices now to take and make the most of every opportunity you get. Because you're going to get a handful of opportunities that present themselves this year. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do? I want to challenge you, do this in practical ways. Maybe for you, you commute into work. Maybe you drive into Austin every single week. Maybe you drive to San Antonio. How are you leveraging that time? Are you mindlessly clicking on the radio? Maybe you leverage that time. Maybe you listen to podcasts. Maybe you want to learn more about a subject. Maybe you want to start a business. Listen to a business podcast. Maybe you want to learn more about Jesus. Get the audio Bible and play the Bible on your drive into work. Make the most of that opportunity. If you're commuting into work, you have a 30-minute drive, an hour drive. Do you know how much time that is in 2019? That's an opportunity that you could leverage this year. Maybe you decide to cut back on social media or cut back on screen time. That's one thing that I'm doing this year. Is a setting came up last year for iOS, for Apple iPhones, where you could restrict the amount of time that your kids could be on their phones. And I said, thank you, Jesus, right? I was like, oh, I am restricting this so much. One of my kids didn't have their phone updated. And I was like, hey, why don't you go ahead and update that? There's some new features, some cool things you can do. I'm like, oh, there's some cool things I can do as well, right? And I restricted that, and we've had great conversations about that. It's created accountability. She's come back to me and said, this has been so great to help me. And then I thought, maybe this screen time restriction thing might be good for me. So I've gone in and created restrictions for me on the amount of time that I can spend, because there are times I'm like the rest of you. I can just mindlessly surf, right? And just scroll. That's missing an opportunity. So what if I cut back there to create opportunities in other places? This is what I mean by making the most of every opportunity you get. So that's the first one. The second one's really going to build on that, because there's this set of opportunities that we're all going to have, that we all have in our life, And how are we leveraging those? And then there will be moments this year, there are moments in life where we have chances to take that next step. And I want to challenge you in 2019, learn to leap. Learn to take that leap of faith and to challenge yourself and to pursue something that's been a dream of yours. Is there something, maybe it was a resolution that you wrote down last year that you didn't achieve. Maybe it's this dream that you've never told anyone about, that you're afraid to even talk to anyone. Learn to leap this year. Learn to just pursue that. It may not mean quitting your job immediately. Maybe it becomes a side hustle that you work on it for a while and it creates a source of income. Maybe it's something that you eventually chase after. One of the things I've loved this year is I had one of my closest friends, an accountability partner with me, a guy that I've known for 20 years, had a dream to write a book. And in 2018, he said that he wanted to do it. And I know he had a lot of people looking at him saying like, yeah, you and everybody else on the planet, right? Like, good for you. And you know what he did? He sat down and every single day he decided, I'm going to write something. And he worked at it, and he worked at it, and he worked at it. And I had the pleasure at the end of last year for him to ship me a copy of his book. And I love it because even the title of his book is Chasing Better, Awakening the Person You've Always Longed to Be. And my friend Corey decided, you know what? I'm going to chase this dream. I'm going to pursue this. I'm not just going to say I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And he did it. It was one of the things I love getting to watch people pursue their dreams. We've had a couple of amazing opportunities here at Icon Church to watch people in our church do this. The end of 2018 for us as a church staff had some transitions. But I've loved it because it's been people pursuing their dreams. Benji Block, our former worship pastor, leading worship, had a job here, had this safety net and the security, had a dream of wanting to pursue traveling and speaking and using the gifts that God has given him to impact more people around this nation. And he worked on it on the side and worked on it and one day said, I'm ready to leap. I'm ready to take that leap of faith. And we're getting to watch him up close, learn to leap and pursue those dreams. We're getting to watch my sister, our former children's pastor, has had a dream to foster children for years. And she's getting the opportunity to learn to leap in that way. She's pursuing an opportunity here in Texas where you can be a full-time foster parent for children who, without that kind of full-time care, would be in a group home, would be in some residential treatment program, but they know these children are young enough that they need to be raised in a loving home. They need something to help transition them to that next step. And she's looking into pursuing this. This is a dream that she's had for years, and she's learning to leap into this. I want you to look at these amazing examples that we've had up close and say, how can I leap this year? What does it look like for me to pursue my dreams? Sometimes it's putting yourself out there. There's another guy at our church that I was talking to him recently, and he wanted to learn more about video, and he just asked me, and he started filming our church news videos. Again, pursue something. If there's something you want to do this year, one of my favorite things is just to be someone's cheerleader. Say, go for it. So whatever that is, call the guidance counselor, talk to someone, tell someone, start working on it now. Write out that business plan. Seek advice, counsel, learn to leap. That's how you take control of 2019. See, I love this idea of kind of learning to leap. And I love the wisdom that we find in this. In the Bible, there's this king of Israel, and he's basically achieved everything. He has everything that life would say you'd ever want. And he looks back on everything, and he's challenging people to pursue life wholeheartedly. I love the way, again, Eugene Peterson puts this in his paraphrase. This is in Ecclesiastes. It says, seize life, eat bread with gusto, drink wine with a robust heart. Oh, yes, God takes pleasure in your pleasure. Dress festively each morning. Don't skimp on colors and scarves. Relish life with the spouse you love each day and every day of your precious life. He continues on. He says, each day is God's gift. It's all you get in exchange for your hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each one. Whatever turns up, grab it and do it, and heartily. This is your last and only chance at it. There's neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you're most certainly headed. I love that he ends a little dark. I get it. Like, if you put this up on your desk, you can just cut that last part off. God won't mind. You're like, man, that's kind of dark and depressing, right? Like, staring at that each morning. But it's true. You get one shot at life. Make the most of it. Are you doing what you want to do for the rest of your life? If not, what can you do today to lead you in another direction? Chase that dream. Learn to leap. And the third thing really for me is something that may not surprise you. It'll probably sound a little bit like an oxymoron, but as a pastor, this is one thing that I would encourage you to do. Number 3 for 2019 is to gain control, learn to give up control. To gain control, learn to give up control. You might be sitting there and you might be thinking like, Dan, what on earth do you mean to gain control, learn to give up control? What I mean by this is I'm really echoing the words of Jesus. See, because as a follower of Jesus, I have to take his words seriously. And when he looked at his followers, when he looked at the world, if he were to stand here and look at all of us, he would say something like this. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. It's as if Jesus is saying, there's this way of living. There's this life that you have the opportunity to grab hold of. But it's hidden in this pursuit after Jesus. And he's saying, you will find that kind of life if you follow me. In another place, it says, Jesus declares that I have come to give life and life to the fullest, the most abundant kind of life you can imagine. Do you want that kind of life? That's found in following Jesus. See, there's certain things that we can control in life, and then there's some things that we can't. But what we try to do oftentimes is we try to control everything we can, right? We want to control people. We want to control outcomes. We want to control things for our kids. We want to control our future. We want to control all these things. And Jesus is saying, you want to find life? Let it go. Just follow me. Look at the way I'm going to live my life. And then you go and do likewise. He had these followers called disciples, people that were trying to become like their rabbi. And then he looked at them when he was about to leave and he said, now you and go make disciples of all nations. Basically, you find people and encourage them to do what you've done, to follow me. Look at my life, the way I've lived my life. You want a fresh start? Follow Jesus. What if in 2019, that was our biggest priority? What if that was the biggest priority of our church, of our county? Can you imagine if everyone in this county said, I'm going to do everything I can to leverage everything I have for the most people? I want my life to be marked by nothing more and nothing less than love. What if that happened? What if in America, the entire nation said, we want to be the most loving people this world ever sees. We want to leverage everything we have to help as many people as we can. Because that's exactly what Jesus did. It would change our world. And you know what? I think it would change our lives for the better. The reason, unapologetically, I want you to follow after Jesus is for this. One, I think it'll make your life better, eternally better. There's not a doubt in my mind. And two, at the same time, it will make this whole world a better place to live. We will, in a sense, do what Jesus talked about as we bring the kingdom of heaven here to earth. And how we're going to end today is we're going to end by doing something that Jesus did with his followers. In fact, it was on the night that he was about to be betrayed by one of his closest friends that he flipped something on its head, something that they had done for generations. They had practiced this meal called Passover to remember God bringing them out of slavery, protecting them. And Jesus turned this on his head. And as you came in, hopefully you received something that looks like this. If you didn't receive communion on your way in, the host teams, they're going to be walking down the aisles. Just kind of turn, get their attention, raise your hand. They'll bring you this. But inside this, there's two things. There's bread and there's juice, representing the bread and the wine of that meal. And Jesus on that night took the bread and he broke it. He said, this is my life. Showing them, I'm going to give up my life. My life will be broken for the people I love. I will give to the point of giving up my life. He said, do this in remembrance of me. I want you to go and do likewise. And then he took the wine, symbolized by the juice, and he said, this is my blood, blood of a new kind of covenant. You guys used to pursue God in a different way, trying to achieve, trying to work your way there, trying to be good enough. But I'm telling you, the rules have changed. There's a new kind of covenant. And every time you do this, for thousands of years, churches have been doing this, people have been doing this, gathering in rooms like this, gathering in homes, remembering that moment. And today, what I'd like to do is, in these next couple of moments, in a second, the band is going to play a couple of songs. And when they do, I want you to take some time to take communion on your own. Maybe you can take it with a loved one, a family member, a friend, someone that you came with. But I want you to remember the life Jesus lived, the way he gave, the way he loved, the people he loved. And you say, I'm going to do my best to follow that. That is the way of Jesus. You see, because if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian in this room, this is our only option. Like, this is a command for us, right? But you might be in this room right now, and maybe someone brought you, maybe a friend invited you, and you're not a Christian. You're not sure about this whole God thing. You've got so many questions. I want to challenge you this year. You've seen what you can do. You've seen what this life has brought you without trying to follow Jesus. What if 2019 you made a change? What if in 2019 you decided to take this thing seriously? Maybe you've just kind of been coming to church and it's kind of been this ritual and it hasn't been this wholehearted thing. What if 2019 it became a wholehearted thing? What if you decided this year is going to be different? I'm going to hit CNTRL+ALT+DELETE in my life and I'm going to reboot to follow after Jesus with everything I have. Oh, you'll make mistakes, so will I. But do your best to orient your life around the life of Jesus. And if that's you, I would challenge you to do the same thing of anyone that was making a New Year's resolution. I want to challenge you, write it down. Tell someone. That's the best way for things to stick in life, is to be accountable. And as a church, we would love to journey with you. In fact, if you decide today to say 2019, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to follow Jesus, and you're making this new commitment, I want to encourage you, go to the info center after service. We've got a free Bible. We've got a gift that we'd like to give you. Stop by, tell them. We want to journey with you. I would love nothing more than for us as a team, we'd love to get coffee with you, to sit down, to talk with you, to encourage you, again, to be your cheerleader, to cheer you on in this effort. So don't leave here without telling someone, without letting someone know, I'm going to do this. So wherever you're at, whatever 2018 looked like for you, you can have a fresh start this year. You can reboot this year. If you decide by the brutal choice of your will to take control and you make the most of every opportunity. You learn to leap. You decide to take chances and to pursue those dreams you have. And to yield your control to Jesus and say, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to look at your life and the choices you made and try to model and orient my life around those ideals. If you make that decision, again, I'd encourage you to tell one of us, to let the info center know. We'd love to journey with you. But I'm going to pray for you. In a moment, the band is going to play a couple of songs. You can feel free to take communion at your own speed, reflecting on that life of Jesus and how you're going to take control here in 2019. See, I did what I said at the beginning of the message. I did that on purpose to bring it like full circle. You like how I did it? Anyway, let me pray for you, and we'll continue on.